I create songs out of classic paintings. This week, Saturn Devouring His Son by Francisco Goya. If you're talking to a Spanish person, Francisco Goya. Although this painting is quite literal, I mean it is literally a man eating another man, there's more than meets the eye when it comes to this piece. Francisco Goya was born on March 30th, 1746. He didn't start as a dark, disturbing painter. In fact, he rose through the ranks of Spanish society in a very traditional way. He began designing tapestries, which eventually gave him access to the royal court. From there, he climbed to the highest echelon, serving under multiple regimes including Charles III, Charles IV, and later, Joseph Bonaparte during the French occupation. Goya became successful, wealthy, and part of the newly rising bourgeois class. His life was stable, but everything changed in 1792. At the age of 46, Goya fell seriously ill and went completely deaf. This moment marked a turning point, not just in his life, but in his art. His work became darker, more critical, and more honest. In his 50s, he created Los Capricos, a series of satirical prints attacking the corruption in society, the church, the ruling class, and the human behavior itself. These works were controversial, and Goya eventually withdrew them, likely out of fear of the Inquisition. Around this time, Goya was influenced by the Enlightened thinkers like Rousseau, embracing reason, science, and criticism of the blind tradition. But Spain remained deeply tied to the older structure of power. Then came war. In 1808, Napoleon invaded Spain and removed Ferdinand VII from power. At first, some including Goya were sympathetic to the Enlightenment reforms associated with the French, such as the abolition of the Inquisition. But the reality of the occupation quickly turned violent, and the Spanish population suffered greatly. Goya witnessed these horrors firsthand. In his 60s, he created Los Desastres de la Guerra, documenting the brutality committed by both sides, French and Spanish alike. In these works, there are no heroes. Eventually, the Spanish rebels forced the French out, and Ferdinand VII returned to power. However, rather than continuing reform, he restored tyrannical rule, reinstated the Inquisition, and suppressed liberal ideas. To survive in this environment, Goya continued to produce works that aligned with the regime when necessary. But over time, his public role diminished. Isolated, deaf, and disillusioned, Goya withdrew from public life and moved into a farmhouse. There in his 70s, he created the Pintores Negras, not for the public, but directly on the walls of his home. These works are often seen not as madness, but the expression of an aging man shaped by war, illness, and political turmoil. One of the most famous of these is, of course, Saturn Devouring His Son. Painted on the wall of his dining room, it draws from both mythology and contemporary reality. The image comes from the ancient myth of Kronos, also known as Saturn for the Romans, a titan who overthrew his father to rule the gods, but he was warned that one day his own child would overthrow him. Fearing this prophecy, Saturn devoured his children, but one survived, Zeus, who later returned, overthrew him, and fulfilled the prophecy. Goya transforms this myth. Instead of a child, Saturn is shown consuming a full-grown body. He appears terrified, almost aware of the horror of his own actions, yet unable to stop. This is no longer just mythology. Many historians interpret this as a reflection on power, a ruler so consumed by fear that he destroys what sustains him in order to maintain control. Some believe it may echo the regime of Ferdinand VII, while others see it more broadly as a representation of a nation turning on its own people during times of war, famine, and instability. The devoured body can be seen as symbolic of the population, and the darkness surrounding Saturn is often interpreted as ignorance. Goya wasn't necessarily painting a single story. He may have been expressing something more universal about fear, power, and the darker side of human nature, and that's what makes his painting so disturbing. It feels less like a myth and more like a truth people still struggle to face. Alright, now we know the history of it, now we know the blah 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 of it. Now we finally start composing. I really want to follow my gut instinct and listen to what I'm actually hearing in my head when I look at this painting. Personally, believe it or not, this might seem quite strange to you, I'm feeling a little bit more of a Russian thing going on. I'm seeing like a classic chord progression like from like the Red Army Choir or like some old communist song, something like this. Yeah, literally that. The way I structured the song is very basic. So we have intro, outro, we have the hook, verse 1, pre-chorus, hook, verse 2, pre-chorus, hook, double hook. This type of structure is very common in pop music. It also retains the basic listener's attention. It doesn't really take a lot to follow these types of things. Also, I'm going to try my best to keep this around 2 minutes. I want to go more of a modern pop rock type of sound, but without neglecting my orchestral abilities. Now, to start off the actual track, not only do I want to go down a Russian road, I also wanted to keep it a little bit more cinematic. I would like to make it feel like it can be used in a movie. I'm thinking cinematic, rock, punky vibe, Russian as well. Only one name comes into mind, Danny Elfman. One of my favorite composers. So like I'm imagining like Coraline but rock. Almost like a stop motion type of film. More of like a spooky, Halloween-y vibe. Obviously with like, you know, Saturn devouring his own son. It's I feel like it fits the vibe. So for the intro, I created this cool, almost theater piece where you feel like you're in a certain movie, you're in a chamber. The way I'm imagining is that you have the kid who's in jail. Saturn comes and essentially says, you know, come, I'm gonna eat you now, and the kid is freaking out. You have Saturn walking in with his footsteps, you hear grunting, you hear like the kid kind of like scared and like, whoa, like freaking out, and obviously Saturn comes at the end and he goes, come here boy, which is my voice altered down with Alter Boy. This guy, amazing. Almost sounds like Megatron from the first Transformer movies from 2007. Now, let's get the hook going. This part has to stay with you. Okay. So first things first, let's come up with a chord progression. Since we're going down a Russian route, this is exactly what I'm thinking. Simple enough. I'm thinking of a time of 6/8 to really have like that, and we're gonna stick in the key of B minor. Now the most important thing to me is coming up with a catchy melody, and this painting is making me feel this. Obviously, I'm not gonna sound like a communist singer from the 60s. Let's find the right instrument to put that melody on. But before we do that, let's find the actual drum groove. I'm thinking of something like this. Fun, no? Very simple, obviously done digitally, not a real drum set. We've got a couple of plugins on it. We have Black Box, which brings a lot of life into it. We've got Devil Up, which makes it a little more lively, I would say. And some EQs here and there, taking care of some bass frequencies and whatnot, not to interfere too much with the actual rest of the track. Now for the melody turned into a riff, per se, I'm thinking a nice juicy bass, a fat one. And I'm gonna do something funny with it. Instead of just keeping it boom, 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 you know, the classic bass sound, I would like to add an arpeggiator on it. This is how it sounds. Did a little bit of EQ on it, some Pro MB, did a fun little trick on Pultec, which essentially where we boost up the bass and then attenuate it. It brings a certain balance to the track. The bass plugin is Emulator by Arturia, and obviously it's got a little bit of Decapitator on it. You gotta make it a little rough. Now some of my favorite sounds for the track are actually the keyboards that are in the back. Look how beautiful these sound. So this sound over here is actually a good mixture between 3 sounds. I used 2 presets from Emulator, and I also used a Mellotron on it. You fuse them together, and that's the sound that you get. Also, I would like to add the kid from earlier on still screaming throughout the hook, but I feel like it's a little too early, so I'm gonna tease it. I'm gonna make the scream into a riser, like such. Now, let's talk about the verse. First half of the verse, I want to keep it more quiet, so that when the second half comes, you have a little difference happening. Every 4 bars, you want to have something a little different going on, right? Just piano. My voice comes along and I start singing. Woke up this morning with pain. My heart is aching again. Had a dream where he was king. Ending my life with a blink. Halfway through the second verse, that's when we introduce the gritty bass. This time the bass tone is different. We're going through pigment and not emulator. Nice, cool, modern tone. For the melody of the verse, I wanted to have a nice structure to it, so I'm thinking A, B, A, C. Now what does that mean? A, B, blah, 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 alphabet. A is correlated with the first melody, B with the second, C with the third, naturally. Now, you start off with one melody. People have it in their minds. You break the melody with a B. Oh, something different. You bring back the A. Oh, I remember that from earlier. And C to have a conclusion to it. Easy peasy. Pre-chorus, I'm thinking for things to be really in unison, but with an added choir, so it sounds really like suddenly like, whoa, where are we going? What's going on over here? Really keep that Red Army vibe going. I'm thinking the chord progression to be quite simple. Here's what the choir sounds like over here. It's all my voice in like different areas of the room and with like a lot of reverb and whatnot. It's a long way down. In my arms, I devour. So as the song prolongs, I want to make it more and more intense. So like the pre-chorus for the second time through, I add these rough guitars into it. There's some tape mellow on it, some altar boy, decapitator, good EQs, make it really sound grungy and cool and very modern. Also, by the way, I couldn't help myself. Throughout the whole track, you can hear the acoustic guitar really, really low in the mix. So like example, in the hook, this is what you're hearing. All these little elements come together to really bring forth the song. And I finally added the vocal screams in the hook as well. Keeping that cinematic vibe going where the kid is actually like screaming his ass off and whatnot. In addition, to keep things a little more modern, in some areas I decided to add a couple of fun little trinkets to keep your ear going. So example, when I mention the word clock, you hear this tick tick tick. In the second verse, when you hear the word chance, I have a little coin going ding. It's fun little stuff like that. They keep the listener going. So for all your composers, musicians, or people who are just simply interested in music production, just music in general, what I do personally as a composer is I try to have an element of surprise at every 4 bars in a sense. I'm not a zealot about it. I don't do it every single time, but I try to keep it entertaining. Cool sounds, the reverbs, ins and outs, and these little tricks like that, where maybe suddenly the reverb can come and sweep away, and suddenly it's super dry. But at the end of the day, the most important part is the actual composition of the song, the songwriting of it, the choice of melodies we're using. Every single detail of the song actually does matter. To conclude the actual track, I went back to the cinematic aspect of it, where you can hear Saturn actually devouring his son, you know. It's actually me doing these little weird sounds, if you pay attention. And alongside it, I couldn't help myself. I added the orchestra. Here's the arrangement for the strings over here. Did a couple of different things. I switched up the melodies, I switched up the harmonies a bit, so it could sound different from the rest of the song. Instead of keeping more diamond notes, like a na 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 na, I decided to have more movement in it, like a na 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 na. It's just for fun. I don't want to go too crazy with the orchestral stuff during the whole track, but that's what it sounds like at the end with a string. In terms of the lyrics, Although the history of it is so fascinating and so cool, especially with the reference that we can make with Saturn being a metaphor for Ferdinand during the Spanish Revolution, and the sun not being simply Saturn's son, but also being a metaphor for the people of Spain, I decided to opt out on making the song based too much in reality. I decided to go more towards the Greek mythology of it, because I'm looking at this and I'm like, it's too literal. The painting is so literal, you can't escape it. I mean, it's literally Saturn eating his son. And I'm like, you know what? Let's keep it simple. I think people would understand a little bit better as well. We're not going to start talking about Ferdinand and the monarchy and the revolution in 1865, you know, it's like, forget it. Let's just stick to the gods eating the sun, you know. In conclusion, Barcelona. So, painting, song, I'm pretty happy with it. I would normally say I'm proud of it, but it's one of the 7 deadly sins, and we have to be careful with those sins. The composition, songwriting, arrangement, production, mastering is 100% complete. Thank you very much. And not only is it complete, it is also released. You can go listen to the song anywhere you wish on any platform. So Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, the whole 9 yards. So what did we gain out of all of this? We got cultivated through our human history. We learned about European history. We learned about human behavior, the Spanish Revolution. We educated ourselves on this iconic artist. We learned more insights about music and composition arrangements. Although I am an artist who's making a song out of a painting, it's a cool project. The real insight on this channel is essentially education and cultivation for all generations. So if you want to stick around and get more fun information about whatever it is that we're going to do in the future regarding the arts or history and philosophy and whatnot, you're going to have to do the classic stuff. Go like the video, comment on the video, subscribe, hit the bell, the ding dong. I'll see you till the next one. The schedule is that we're going to be releasing a video every single week, so really stick along. With that being said, bada bim, bada boom.
I was just looking.
Come along. If you want to do a quick section. Here's our mixing engineer, David. David Peyote or Cote? What do we do? This is David. He's the mixing engineer for the entire track, and also is the master engineer. So maybe David is willing to give us some insights on the whole ordeal. Right, David? And that's the end of that.